A new NBA champion has been crowned in the 2023-24 NBA campaign, but maybe new is not the correct word to use for the Boston Celtics. Championship number 18 secured last night, the most ever in the history of the National Basketball Association, with a 106-88 decisive victory in game number 5. Boston closed as a 7-point favorite. They easily cover the number. Total closed at an over-under of 210 and a hook, and it stays under. All 5 games in a short NBA championship set stay under their pre-game number. The Boston Celtics, championship number 18, and for this core, led by Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, the 2 guys to get selected number 3 overall, Brown in 2016, Tatum in 2017. They finally lead Boston to the top of the mountaintop once again. An NBA champion for the first time since 2008.
And a completely deserving champion. You had great basketball players, a great coach, a great winning environment. You took care of your business on home court. You dominated the NBA in the regular season. You dominated the NBA in the postseason. This was a team as you are going to find all the way through. And as we say, they're probably not done yet. We got a pretty good poll out there on the SportsGrid network here this morning on a Fade the Public, if they are actually going to be able to repeat and who's going to stop them right now. They have the money. They have the young talent here at this point. But if we focus on game number 5 in itself, this is probably what we expected. And also, I talked about this yesterday. Being a handicapper, some of the things that are really hard to quantify are, was that game an actual fluke or my eyes deceiving me because the Dallas Mavericks really took apart the Boston Celtics and you figured maybe they could get some momentum going on the road, but that certainly wasn't the case. We expected Kyrie to step up. He didn't feel like doing that in Boston. It was almost like, I feel so bad the way I treated Boston when I was there. I'm just going to hand them an NBA championship. It's really the way it felt. 5 of 16 from the floor, 41 minutes, minus 11 on the court, only 15 points. When we were saying like, hey, Kyrie got that mojo in game 3 and game 4, but he's like, you know what? Going back to Boston, I don't feel like I need that same mojo. I also said yesterday, the one guy I knew that was going to have a high usage rate was going to be Luka Doncic. 12 of 25 from the floor, 43 minutes out there, 12 rebounds and 5 assists. It wasn't good enough. Why? Because once again, he didn't get the support from his teammates that he needed, unlike the Boston Celtics, who were tremendous on defense yesterday. And what did I tell you? I didn't know if I liked the side. We thought the Boston Celtics would win. I liked the under a lot more than the side, and they played unbelievable defense. You knew right away, 18 points in that first quarter. The Boston Celtics meant business yesterday, and that business was a championship.
Absolutely so. And Donnie, we said all along in the quick preview of this series, and it wasn't exactly quick, as we had a full week off from when the Mavericks won the Western Conference crown, 10 days from when Boston won the Eastern Conference crown, until the start of this NBA Finals, that the Dallas dynamic duo of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, specifically Luka Doncic being the best player in this series, so far had to outweigh Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown that Boston's better balance in depth could not make up the margin. Never really happened in this series. And you look up and down the stat sheet yesterday. Jrue Holiday, 15 points, 11 boards. The best plus-minus, a plus 21 for the Celtics. Great on the defensive end of the floor. Derek White chipped a tooth and made 4 triples, as he did consistently throughout this NBA championship series. We even saw Kristaps Porzingis battle through the torn retinaculum to play in game number 5. And Peyton Pritchard, the king of half-court buzzer beaters, did so again, sending the game to a 20-point lead for the Celtics into that halftime break. Boston was the best team all year long, and they get the crowning achievement of championship number 18, the most ever in NBA history. But it'd been a long time in Beantown since the Celtics were the NBA champs, since 2008. Yesterday was June 17th, 2024. The Celtics' last championship back in 08, June 17th, 2008. A big day in Massachusetts. And the Boston Celtics, Donnie, cover as a 7-point home favorite. At home this year, 52 games inside TD Garden. Make that 46-6 straight up for Boston. 28-21-3 against the spread, booked as the favorite side in all 52 home games this season.
It is amazing, too, because you're supposed to be playing under the same guidelines in the NBA and professional sports. Salary caps, draft picks, you have to operate in those parameters. And it's amazing to me to find out, like the one thing we talked about the Dallas Mavericks for the past, 2 years? Boy, if we can just get somebody who can run with Luka, that team should be okay. They go out and get Kyrie Irving, which is great. So you have two superstars at the top of your lineup. But we still kept asking those questions. If the two superstars aren't running right, or at least one of them isn't, who can step up? We never really had that opinion. And maybe it's unfair to say that about the Dallas Mavericks. Is why they made it to the NBA Finals. That's an achievement in itself. But when we talk about roster construction and how to put a team together, like look at the Celtics, two superstars in Tatum and Brown. You have a bona fide floor general in Jrue Holiday that plays defense and does the nasty stuff, but still the ability to shoot 14 times, make 7 of those attempts, and get 11 rebounds. And then, there's that guy Kristaps Porzingis that you picked up as well, another all-star caliber player to go along with a solid bench of guys that can shoot coming up there at any moment here, as we saw with Hauser and Pritchett throughout this playoff run. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics front office. They didn't just get lucky with draft picks here.
Right.
The construction of this roster and bringing guys in, even though they weren't drafted by your own team, and fitting them in, that's unbelievable, man. So Porzingis and Holiday, unbelievable additions here. Much, much better than probably would have turned out with Marcus Smart, who I know was a fan favorite in Boston. So credit Brad Stevens and that organization. It's tremendous, man.
And they put together this organization, this roster, constructed to reach this level of success. Co-favorites before the NBA season after the acquisition of Kristaps Porzingis to win an NBA title. Pretty quickly into the year after Milwaukee suffered its struggles, even though they weren't so much struggles, but just a turbulent opening half, the Celtics were a solo favorite at a short plus 260 price by the time we reached the All-Star break in the middle of February. When the playoffs began, they were nearing even money. By the end of the opening round, into minus money, and entered the NBA Finals. DRS is a minus 225 series outright favorite. What was expected, now made official. The Boston Celtics, the NBA champs.
Yes, and no doubt about it either. And that's what we're talking about. It was so much fun to watch Boston throughout the season because the expectations were so high, Ben. And what did they do? They just kept delivering on those expectations. And I love the fact that they really handled the Dallas Mavericks in the finals, because then we can't say like, oh, well, see, they finally met a good team here and they couldn't handle it. They wiped the Mavericks off of the court, man. One of the better seasons you're going to see, the Boston Celtics 2023-2024.
We'll continue to talk about where the Celtics fall in NBA history next. The most championships in NBA history. The Boston Celtics as a franchise make that number 18 last night inside TD Garden in front of the Beantown faithful. They move in front of their longtime historic rivals, the LA Lakers, who have 17. The Golden State Warriors, 7. The Chicago Bulls have 6. And the San Antonio Spurs with 5. The Boston Celtics, the most ever in the history of the association. But this the first since 2008. Only 2 in this millennium for the C's, but they accomplished that feat that had long eluded them and this core last night. And it's not just the most NBA titles in history for any franchise. This year's 2023-24 Celtics organization will be remembered in historic fashion. 16-3 in 19 playoff games for this year's group of C's. That is the 10th best win percentage all time in NBA playoff history. The second team since we went fully to a best of 7. That means 16 wins in an NBA playoff in the 2002-03 season. Only the Golden State Warriors, who went 16-1 during the 2017 postseason, have a better mark than this year's Boston Celtics team. History in many ways last night inside TD Garden.
Yes, there was. And also, like, sometimes you have to take these championships with a grain of salt when you see the total amount of those, because a lot of those happened in the past. But having said that about the Celtics organization itself, like, there's been dregs of the NBA with teams that just have stunk out loud, Ben, for 50 straight years, it feels like. The Celtics were never that organization. I was like, boy, they had a terrible 7-year run where they're at the bottom of the Eastern Conference or the Atlantic Conference. That's never been the case. They've always been a competitive franchise. And if you want to look at those superstar championship-laden teams in the 60s, the Larry Bird era in the 80s, and then moving through into the 90s, I know there wasn't a lot of success championship-wise, but into the 2000s with the KG teams and all that stuff, and now leading up to this team that's won a championship. It's been a great organization for a long, long time, and rightfully so. 18 championships in their history. And also, let's remind ourselves, it's not as if like these 18 championships actually date back to the early 1900s, like let's just say Major League Baseball. It's been fairly new, but this has always been a competitive franchise with superstar players all throughout, and deservedly so. 18 now ahead of 17 for the Los Angeles Lakers in that great rivalry.
And just 2 for Boston since 1986, but they had been close. This year was their third consecutive appearance in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics had made the ECF 4 of the last 5 years, into the NBA Finals twice in the past 3 seasons, came up lame in only 6 games against Golden State 2 years ago, but now to the top of the NBA as a champion. And our debate, after it became pretty clear with Boston holding a 3-0 series advantage that the Celtics were going to win, number 18, at a certain point in this series, was who's going to win NBA Finals MVP? Entering game number 3 in Dallas last week, Jayson Tatum was the favorite. Tatum was the favorite entering the series. But after last night, despite Tatum scoring 31 points and being Game 5's leading scorer, only finishing just a few assists away or a few boards away from a triple-double, Jaylen Brown, who scored 21 points in game number 5, the NBA Finals MVP. I know it's not all decided by the 5th and final game. I'm still trying to find in this series where Jaylen Brown was so far ahead of Jayson Tatum to be the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals MVP entering last night's Game 5.
And by the way, like midway through the game, multiple sites out there, which included the FanDuel Sportsbook, had a heavy favorite price on Jayson Tatum, and rightfully so, because if you're telling me the best player on the team, it is Jayson Tatum. We know that. He has a better, more points, more assists, and rebound average in the series. In the pivotal closeout game, he was the best player on the court, and he didn't win the MVP. And also, I might not have even had a problem with this, man. If we were heading in to this finals game, game number 5, and you said, hey, look at this, the FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 100 Jaylen Brown, plus 110 on Tatum. Ooh, this is going to be close all the way through. Let me see the way it plays out. But the fact that we kept looking at who is such a heavy favorite in Brown, I just couldn't figure it out. I said, you know what? It might just come down to tonight. Who Tatum was the better player. And you're right, almost had a 30-point triple-double and still didn't win the MVP. I don't know who's voting on it. I don't know what they saw, and I don't know why he was such a heavy favorite. But there you go. Heavy favorite, end up winning it, even though I don't think he should have won it.
Tatum was atrocious in both the first 2 games in Boston. There is no mincing words. He was 12 of 38 from the floor. That's 31.5% from the field. When you are the superstar, when you want to be considered one of the 5 or 10 best players in the NBA, that cannot be your performance. But still in the final 3 games, Tatum found his stroke. We'll talk about it up next as we continue our reaction to the NBA Finals. There is no debate who the NBA's best team was this year. That was the Boston Celtics, 64-18 throughout the regular season, a 16-3 postseason mark, the 10th best win percentage in the history of the NBA playoffs. 80 wins in total for the Boston Celtics, becoming just the 13th team in the history of the association to post at least 80 wins, regular season plus playoffs combined in NBA history. But what is the debate, at least that we will have here? Who should have won NBA Finals MVP? Does it really matter? Jayson Tatum screamed, "We did it!" So he was just happy they won a championship last night in Boston. But Jaylen Brown, who won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP hardware, also taking home the NBA Finals MVP award as well. And Jaylen Brown was good and consistent throughout the NBA Finals. He scored at least 20 points in 4 of the 5 games, all 3 in Boston, where in the first 2 games of the series, Jayson Tatum fell flat for the Celtics, 31.5% from the floor in games 1 and 2. But on the crowning night inside TD Garden, bringing home the crowning achievement of championship number 18, Tatum was Boston's best player, the best player on the floor. 31 points, 11 dimes, 8 boards, just 2 rebounds shy of a triple-double, but fell short of winning Finals MVP.
Yeah, it was an interesting, way all the way around because I understand how the locker room dynamics work. And those two guys are very competitive. And they were so competitive over the past 2 to 3 years, we were led to believe that they can't play with each other because they're so competitive at that point. And that competitiveness turned into a championship. But it is kind of interesting. And, in those quiet moments, which we won't see on camera where they're working out, like Jaylen Brown just has that one up on him now. Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Finals MVP. You couldn't have done this without me. I was the star catalyst, like just prodding like one of your friends, which they will do. But having said that, they were both equally deserving, and the ultimate prize is the championship. You put that ring on your finger, it solidifies it. Nobody's going to look at the Boston Celtics and say anything less of, well, they probably could trade away Jayson Tatum and still be fine. No, he is your best basketball player, and we understand that. But it's just odd the way it worked out, where I just thought all the way through those games, like 3, 4, and 5. I understand the competitive nature between the two, and I thought Jayson Tatum would rise to the occasion, and he did. It's just really hard to quantify. Like, I know in a quiet space here, Tatum's going to love winning that championship, smoking the cigars, going to the parade, the duck boats, and all the champagne that's going to be flowing. But deep down, he's got to be asking that question. Look, I understand I didn't play well in games 1 and 2, but I averaged more points, assists, and rebounds, and in the closeout game was the dominant figure, and I didn't win this. What do I have to do to actually win this? And again, on the grand scale of things, it's not that big of a deal, but us as handicappers just watching that price point and scratching our head, and I guess there was something to those price points there. Two great players, equally deserving of MVP. I was just surprised that it didn't go to Tatum because we look at statistics here, and we look at what we just saw last year, and Tatum was tremendous.
And Jaylen Brown was great in game 1. He was Boston's leading scorer. But Kristaps Porzingis was probably the finals MVP of that game. Jrue Holiday was probably the MVP of game number 2. So it really was a toss-up from that point on. I could understand the argument for Jaylen Brown in the Eastern Conference Finals, despite Tatum figuring things out in the final 2 games against Indiana. Brown had the defensive play at the end of game 1, hit the corner 3 to force overtime against the Pacers. There were those magical moments, not as many of them throughout the NBA Finals. And again, maybe we're splitting hairs. Maybe if you ask those two who have been together since 2017, Brown drafted 3rd overall in 2016, Tatum the following year, number 3 overall as well. They have been the core of this franchise in Beantown. They would tell you it doesn't really matter. We won the Larry O'Brien trophy that we will be judged and evaluated by. Just an interesting distinction overall in an NBA Finals that really did not have many debates. We are getting word, because of a new rule in the association, that as soon as the NBA Finals in a season comes to a close, you can start contract negotiations with guys currently on your roster. That Jayson Tatum is expected to sign a 5-year, $315 million contract at $63 million annually. That would be the richest in NBA history, moving past Jaylen Brown, who signed that 5-year, $304 million extension that actually averages out to a little bit less over the entire duration of that contract extension. So Jayson Tatum, a little bit more moolah in the bank account maybe than hardware that Jaylen Brown possesses.
Yeah, and by the way, nobody's going to feel bad for Wyc Grousbach, who's the owner of the Boston Celtics. But when you do that Forbes check-in list here, he's bottom 5 in the NBA for net worth. Now, granted, when your net worth is still north of $500 million, nobody feels bad for you. But as you just pointed out, you got 2 players on your roster with $300 million contracts. And let's not forget the big money that Jrue Holiday gets and Kristaps Porzingis and so forth on that roster. So maybe roster management and construction might catch up to the Celtics maybe later. But next year, they'll be all in the following year as well. But we're seeing the advent of all that new money splashed into the NBA, CBA, and the Celtics right now, their superstar players certainly reaping the benefits of that.
And for this series, again, it might seem like it was a broad set approach or the main narrative entering the NBA Finals, but could the best player in the series, that's Dallas's Luka Doncic, outweigh everything that Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum as a pair and the rest of Boston's balance and depth would bring in the hunt for a Larry O'Brien trophy? The answer, unanimously, almost no, despite game number 4. The Celtics still making easy work of the Mavs in only 5 games. And Luka Doncic was really good. 28 points last night, 12 rebounds, but only 2 of 9 from 3. Luka scored at least 27 points in all 5 games of this series. His points prop last night, 32 and a hook. He stayed under, though, in all 5 games. And will the lasting image of Luka Doncic be game number 3 when his Mavericks team was making the ferocious comeback from being down by as many as 21 early in the fourth and final quarter, fouling out with over 4 minutes remaining, making stupid play after stupid play, and the frustration that overwhelmed and the arguing with the officials? I don't think so. He's still one of the 5 best players in the association, but did come up short, and not all his ultimate blame. He got very little help throughout this series. Kyrie Irving combined for 43 points in 3 total games in Boston. In game 3, he scored 35 at home in Dallas. It's like Kyrie Irving on the floor for Celtics championship number 18 did for Boston what he could never do while a member of the Celtics.
Yeah, by the way, 26, what is that, 29, 6, and 9 is what Luka Doncic averaged. And the funny part about all the way through, Ben, when we're talking about the Mavericks, if they can win the series or win basketball games, the handicap was the same for me every night. Oh, Dallas needs to win? Well, Luka's got to get 40, otherwise they have no chance.
Yep.
That's not really a good recipe because, as we knew coming into the NBA Finals, the deepest team maybe in the NBA is the Boston Celtics. Superstar-wise, great bench, great coach. You get that here. We weren't saying coming into the Finals, well, Tatum better get 35 and Brown better get 30. They have no chance. Nobody said that. And they won games with those guys underperforming here. Why? Because they had other guys that could step up, like Porzingis, and Holiday showed up during the series. So they will retool that roster. Dallas isn't going anywhere. Luka Doncic is going to be an MVP threat for the next 10 years here. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. But they just need to get that, hey, Luka had an off night and scored 17. That's okay. 4 other guys stepped up. They just don't have that yet. But I'll say this. Last year's bench, not nearly as good as this year's bench from the Mavericks. Maybe they can improve it even going into next year as well.
Right. There's some promise there with Derek Lively, who had a great rookie season and a strong performance in these NBA playoffs. But I don't really want to hear that despite Boston's cakewalk through the Eastern Conference, which I will allow, that Dallas wasn't the best team out of the West. The Mavericks beat the Clippers, the Thunder, and the Timberwolves to win the Western Conference and cash that 13-1 ticket, the 7th best price on Dallas to win the Western Conference crown before the year got underway. Sure, the Denver Nuggets were not there at the end to be on the other side to give the Celtics that ultimate test as the reigning NBA champs, but Dallas earned its way to the NBA championship series through winning the Western Conference. So that's where things stand this year in the NBA campaign. We'll already look at next year later in our show to see if the Celtics can now maybe go back-to-back.